All right, we are up on YouTube.
All right, so I'll call this here ad hoc budget committee meeting to order. Ask you to join me for just a moment of silent prayer as we consider our service, both elected officials and staff, of all the sacrifice and service we make to our city. Amen. I thank y'all for your service. So most of this here discussion is going to be led once again by Amy Wharton, our leader on finance, department requests. I think she starts with, and I think we're all interested, Amy, particularly to see what you're seeing for preliminary revenue projections. So take it away.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Mr. Mayor, before Amy starts, just to remind everyone, if you're not speaking, if you could put your microphones on mute.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. So today I'm just going to go over some of the departmental requests that we didn't go over. We didn't have present to you, the smaller ones. They're just real quick. And I sent you the master list last night, I think, so you could look at them more in detail if you'd like. So for my department, most of the requests are just to restore budgets back to pre-pandemic numbers, especially for like the Dock Street Theater process improvement, a little bit more, not actually back to pre-pandemic, but just a little bit more for professional and contractual services for our process improvement vendor. The Novak contract is up for rebidding, so we're getting a RFP out for that. Should be releasing that shortly. And then just for employee recognition for things we've done for the employees in the past that we cut drastically last year. For a clerk of council, her main request is really the upgrade of one position. Council member travel, just partially restoring that back to pre-pandemic numbers. And then one position in records management, because we are digitizing everything and it's a huge project and we need some help. I think they're going to need some help getting that done. So total request increase in her request this year was 71,000, which mostly is for that one position. Executive municipal court, they had an increase of about 97,000, most of which was or some of it was for restoring to pre-pandemic cuts, sorry. Office supplies, membership dues and publications, things like that, that we cut so drastically last year. They're also asking for cubicles. They're old and they're falling apart. And she's asked for those in the past. She did not ask for them last year, just knowing with the pandemic and our decrease in revenue. So she asked for that again this year. So that's the majority of her request.
Hey, Amy.
Yep.
On the municipal court,
Yes.
This is a small expense, but we had voted earlier, I think a year ago, to dedicate one of the courtrooms to Judge Fields on his 100th birthday. And we never did it. And I don't know what the cost would be for a plaque, but we need to buy a plaque and do that. I know that's small potatoes, but
yeah, I'm certain they can probably absorb that in their budget.
I think so too.
Even this year, they could probably do it if we just figure it out.
And I want you to put in your budget a new system for you for your new microphone, and because
is it not working? Can you not?
I feel like you're in a cave with me right now, like we're just echoing.
Sometimes I think it's my office too. Let me open up my computer and see if that helps. Is that better?
That helps a little bit, yeah.
I just never know.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I could check which sometimes it flips on me in my microphone too. So just tell me if you're still having trouble and I'll play with it more. Okay, and then executive continued corporation counsel, they're just asking for a paralegal position, which they'll need to work on the FOIA stuff because they've adjusted since Susan left in terms of what their duties are, and really kind of lost a position because of Susan. So it's probably a necessary position. The Mayor's Office of Children, Youth and Family just increases to pre-pandemic is mostly what most departments are asking for. They also were asking for some travel and training money to go to the Youth Volunteer Corps Summit, and also for I'm gonna move my thing over, and then also for community education for the two new programs that they have, the mentoring consortium and also the Bank on Charleston initiative, and then a little bit of an increase for first day of school initiative. Let me know if I'm going too fast or if you have questions. Cultural affairs, their total increase in request was about 44,500. A lot of that was because we had previously given them community assistance grants, which we said we were going to stop doing that, just budget for them. So the majority of that is because of that request.
What's the poet laureate stipend at right now?
I think it's 5,000, Councilmember Jackson.
Okay.
And then housing community development, they're asking for a lot of positions. So they had got the housing construction project manager position that we asked. It was kind of a mid-year ad, and we asked them to cover it with a grant, with the knowledge that eventually we would cover it in the general fund. So we're trying to do that in 2022. The Hope Center, which previously was known as the Navigation Center, that whole new program, there's 3 or 4 positions that she's requesting for that. And then there's several positions that are currently being funded by a grant that she would like to move to the general fund as well. And those are the positions: housing rehab program manager, housing finance coordinator, and community liaison and homelessness specialist.
Amy, how long have we been working on funding those out of the general fund as opposed to grants? Hasn't it been some time now?
Well, we have done, most of the CDBG grant money, those positions, I think it is, that are funded by the general fund now. It's just the home program that we haven't accomplished that yet. And that's what those programs are. That's what those positions are funded
Okay.
because it's a home program.
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome. I'll double check that, Councilmember Gregory, but I think that's right. And then she's also asking for a part-time concierge that would assist developers in getting through the permitting process for affordable housing projects. And then some furniture and fixtures, smaller increases to travel training, membership dues and publications, and office supplies. And so her total increase requested is $1 million. HR really didn't have much of an increase. Mostly it's the training programs that were cut in 2020. Quarterly breakfast, these are all items that we pretty much cut back because of the pandemic. It's just a $10,000. Livability, they really only asked to restore overtime to pre-pandemic levels, and that's at $12,000. Recreation, many of their requests also were to restore line items to pre-pandemic levels. Employee travel and training, that's for the swim team and the gymnastic programs. Professional and contractual services, help with special events and camps now that they're becoming fully operational. Some awards, and also for overtime. And then they're asking for 2 positions, 2 part-time lifeguard positions and 2 part-time water safety instructors. And those are, the staffing levels are determined really by DHEC. So when those positions are asked, those are kind of life safety. We consider them life safety and usually end up in the budget for that. So they have to have a certain number of those positions at the pools in order to operate. And then, I guess I had that twice, sorry. Then non-capital equipment, ADA lift at James Island Pool and also the MLK Pool, and to replace a vacuum at Herbert Hazel Pool. And then additional cleaning and janitorial supplies, obviously. They need those just to keep us clean for the pandemic. And total increase was $156,000. You remember that's actually pretty good considering the amount that she gave up last year. Traffic and transportation, they would like to convert 1 position into a superintendent position that oversees signs and marking staff. They're asking for a traffic safety inspector. They have increased and changed their right-of-way permit fees so that those fees will cover that position. They're also asking for a permit clerk to help with those right-of-way permits. And then they were also asking for a traffic management center operations manager. They're
Amy,
ask- Yes.
Yeah. before leaving TNT,
Mhm.
the money that would is appropriate to go in the speed bumps, would that be at this point of the agenda, or does that come under something else?
Yeah, it's on my next slides. They did ask for an increase in for the traffic calming program as well.
Correct, right. Okay, thank you. Let me be quiet.
And they're asking to restore some line items to pre-pandemic levels as well for signs. They're painting and marking supplies, small hand tools, overtime, equipment repairs, those types of things. And then they did ask, or I think Councilmember Waring, it was an additional $50,000 for the traffic calming program.
Yeah, what happens usually runs out, and I know we're gonna have some requests next year, but anyway.
They were also asking for some machines and equipment. Their white paint, thermoplastic kettle and trailer. We can get this on lease purchase, but it's outdated and not doing what it needs to do. A hand liner thermoplastic machine, which is easier for them to use on the smaller, more narrow streets. A traffic line remover, a work zone trailer that will also act as a safety barrier for their workers, and then some traffic counters. And then they're asking for a small increase in employee travel and training as well. Traffic timing study on Daniel Island, which was about 60,000, replacing damaged traffic signal bases along those areas listed here. Meeting Street from Romney to Broad, East Bay Street, Septima Clark Parkway, Maybank and Folly and West Ashley Circle, and that's about $40,000. And then the decorative mass signal at Meeting and Broad Street for $60,000. And again, the Cummings Street conversion, which is about $362,000. So the total request is $900,500, which the majority of it is on this page right here.
Amy, quick question for you. As I looked at the line item budget
Mm-hmm.
and how each item is prioritized,
Yes,
it looked as though the Cumming Street conversion was pretty far down the list.
it is.
Okay, just making sure I'm looking at it correctly.
You are. So that's
Okay.
when we'll come back to our next meeting, Councilman Gregory, and talk about recommendations and things
Okay.
like that. Okay,
Okay, thank you.
you're welcome. So the next meeting, this is kind of, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Just sort of a general question. Go back to that slide one more time. When do some of these the replacement stuff become the responsibility of the state? This is all our responsibility for these expenses?
It is.
Do we get reimbursed at all by the state for any of these things?
No, so they have the traffic signal maintenance program, but I don't think that applies to any of these projects. So no, we don't get reimbursed from the state at all.
Yeah, that's what I thought. That was just I thought it was asked that question. I sort of presumed that was going to be your answer on that.
Mhm. You're welcome. So next week we'll go through mayor's office, police, fire, and public service, because there's some things that we're still working on with them that we just need to circle back and bring to you, and then enterprise funds as well. And we'll start looking at recommendations and trying to prioritize things. So expenditures, our current estimate without the additional requests, so this would just be base budget. It includes everything from the department's 2021 budget, excluding one-time expenditures or initiatives. It includes fact of life and life safety items and any contract price increases that obviously some things just increase every year. The current draft budget includes $208.6 million in expenditures and transfers out for the general fund, and 30.6, almost 7 million in expenses and transfers out for the enterprise fund. And this, like I said, this is just base budget, not all of those requests we just went over and the ones that you've heard from all the larger departments. It doesn't include those numbers at all. So right now, total expenditures, 239.3. Looking at it compared to the approved 2021 budget is 233.9 with a $5.4 million increase from 2021 to 2022. Good.
Yep.
Okay,
I'm still trying to absorb all that. Can you go back that one more second?
sure.
Yeah, yes.
So this is right here, the general fund expenditures and transfers out. I just don't have it by department because it would be very tiny for you to all to look at. So that's just in total. And then this is the enterprise funds and then the total budget. Does that help?
Amy, can I ask, so when you title it the 2022 base,
Mhm.
and then you're telling us that the priority requests are not on that?
That's correct.
Okay, so we're gonna be looking at a much bigger number next week beyond the
Yeah, and I have,
239.
as we go, I kind of, as we go on today, you'll see where we are in terms of deficit before we even consider additional departmental requests.
Okay,
Amy,
Yes,
can you add another column to this for the 2020 budget?
yep, we can.
Okay,
And we'll do 2020 original, not after we
Yes.
slash everything.
right, yes.
Okay. So preliminary revenues. Right now, general fund revenues plus transfers in and reserves is 200 million. 35.8 million for enterprise funds is at 236. And then just to kind of go through our revenue assumptions. Did you want me to go back? I'm sorry.
Yeah, hold on.
Sorry.
That's a lot of numbers. I'm trying to
I
do.
know. This is.
no, you memorize these, but we don't.
And we'll add 2020 to this as well, Councilmember Shade.
Amy, would you detail a little bit the TI and reserves, the 7.9 million, where that's coming from?
Those will be transfers in from other not departments, I'm sorry, from other funds, like hospital, probably just an implied transfer right now because we don't have those numbers. And then from capital improvement, those types of transfers transfers in, and then reserves would be anything we anticipate that we would need to reserve for from this year to next year.
Okay. But you're not already anticipating like using part of our that reserve, the 20% that we keep, you know.
Right.
really
No,
set
that
aside.
is not part of our 20%.
Okay, great, thank you.
You're welcome.
And go back one more time to the expense one. So 239.3 total expenses and 236. So you got a delta there of 3 million already. And this does not include any COLA or
No, we get
anything
there
like that yet. Right,
as I go on.
right.
Everybody good?
Amy, the parking, so you think that's a pretty solid number, 29
I do.
million?
Mhm.
Pretty good.
Assumptions, Charleston County projected growth rate of 4% for vehicles and 3% for all other properties. The projected tax credit factor will remain the same as the 2021 tax bill. So the amount of loss credited to our citizens will be $23.46 million. And then for Berkeley County, 5% for all property. And then the tax credit factor will stay the same as it did for 2021. And loss credited would be $2 million.
So that's the amount credited back to our taxpayers.
Yes.
Yep.
And then local option sales tax has actually been performing strongly in 2021. So our projections are a little higher. You know, we were pretty conservative last year. So we budgeted 18 right now. We're at 22.7, or that's our projection after 7 months. And so we're budgeting 23.72 for next year. And then the credited amount of 23.46. And then Berkeley County, 1.5 projection budgeted, and then we're projecting 1.9, and next year, $2 million. Business licenses was surprising for us in 2021. So we're feeling confident increasing that revenue source in 22. We budgeted 30.5 million. Projection is 38.7. And for 2022, we're projecting 39.5. And with the drainage transfer out of 791,000, it'd be about $38.7 million.
My question, Amy,
Mhm.
we conservatively budget in 21 to 30. Projection came out to, I don't know, 7 million more, a little bit better.
Mhm.
Where is that 7 million?
Oh, what's the increase you mean?
I mean, in other words, if we were budgeting on 30 million
Mhm.
and it turns out to be 38 million, where's that additional revenue?
It's in the general fund.
It's in the general fund.
Yes.
Okay, good.
So franchise fees is always been interesting over the last few years. Cable TV fees continue to decrease. We budgeted very conservatively because we never know with franchise fees lately. We've been under budget the last 2 years. So this year we're over budget a little bit. So we're estimating about 11 million because cable TV keeps decreasing every year. So we felt comfortable with $11 million in 2022. And we're just not sure too with rate changes. We've been hearing something about that. So we just want to stay on the conservative side for franchise fees.
So Amy, on franchise fees, as people switch from, I don't know, Comcast to Amazon, how do we keep up with, how do we keep up with that attrition or that, leaching of revenue?
We don't, in terms of, you mean, how do we get it from Amazon or some
Right.
Fire Stick, or I guess it's a Fire Stick for
Right.
that.
Fire Stick, yeah.
I don't know how we would do that.
Sounds like a class action lawsuit to me.
I'll talk to Julia.
Yeah.
And then parking revenues, 2021, we budgeted at 16.4 in the garages and almost 7 in meters. We're going to 18.4 and 2.9 in 2022. I was going to put in kind of a comparison over the years, just so you could see where we are. I'll do that for next time, but I already had 55 slides and thought I should hold it back. But I'll have that maybe for the full council workshop on Tuesday. So the bottom line, which is in all black, we're at $3.3 million deficit right now without any additional requests from the departments and the pay plan that we talked about. Just tell me when you're ready for me to move.
That's a whole lot better than last year.
It is better than last year, for sure. Not 20 million.
So Amy, where's the $3 million loss coming from?
I'm sorry?
Where's the $3 million difference mainly coming from? We're short $3 million.
Expenses are more.
Is that from the expenses side or from the income side? You think?
It's probably, well, I mean, our income side is a lot better than it was last year, but we also had originally budgeted that 2 mills, which was about $3.7 million. So we've lost that. And then, people are trying to come back from pre-pandemic. They're trying to restore some of their cuts. So that's the expense side.
And Amy, those restorations are considerable, aren't they?
We could add them all up, but probably, yeah, we could add them all up. I don't know that they're super considerable, but we'll have that number for next time so you can see just where everybody's trying to come back from pre-pandemic. It'd be mostly in our bigger departments. These smaller departments, it's not significant, but it probably would be for the larger departments.
Well, $1 million of that is community development, right?
Those are in this. These are just base budget numbers. It doesn't include any additional requests.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Which I think we're around $22 million. We're all, if you added up all of the requests, it's about $22 million.
Don't bring back last year only.
And if we did the top three, or 4 or 5, what would it be, you know?
For everybody,
Yeah,
I don't know. I'd have to go back and look at that.
okay. I mean, and without eliminating the Cumming Street two-way, because it's way down there.
Yeah. Good. Can I move forward?
I'm good.
So it doesn't, like I said, it doesn't include any of the additional requests that we've talked about. And it doesn't include the employee pay adjustment that we've talked about either. And if we wanted to implement our 3-year plan to increase minimum wage to $15, that's an additional $6.9 million, which would put our deficit at $10.2 million. Last year, just to remind you what we had to do to balance last year, 5.9 million in fund balance. We had the 2 mil property tax increase. We cut 10% additional salary savings, and we didn't do the normal transfers that we do to drainage or to affordable housing. So those are just some of the things that we had to cut last year. Good.
Amy, didn't we have a 3-year plan that was a little different, that it wasn't quite as heavy loaded on the first year, kind of spread it out a little more over the 3 years?
We did have that. I'd have to look, Mayor, to see what that number was.
Yeah. I think it was in the 4 range, but I
I
couldn't.
had that slide in here and I took it out.
Okay, no problem.
So sorry. So we're still waiting on property insurance information as well. Working with the IRF the last couple of years has been a little bit more difficult. So I'm hoping that we'll get that next week, but I'm certain we'll have an increase. We're working on tourism revenues and how that will impact the general fund when we determine the amount to transfer in. And then we're just wanted 1 more month of revenue to finalize our projections. And then we need to determine what we're going to do with employee pay. And then
On the tourism revenues, but you do have an estimate in there, right, for the transfer ins? You just saying you will adjust it again after you get another month experience?
yeah, that's right. We'll finalize. Once we have the tourism budgets done, Mayor, we'll know those numbers better.
Gotcha.
And so then that's really all I had for our budget. Anyway, there was some information that you all had asked from our last meeting about our employee information. And so Councilmember Gregory had asked about living wages. So I was going to go through some of those slides if that was okay. Or if you had any other questions on budget, we can talk about that too. Okay, so I'll just go through the living wage. So HR did all of this work. I cannot in any way, shape, or form take credit for it. But they looked at both the MIT and the EPI for living wages in the Charleston area. They looked at 1 adult with no children and 2 adults with 1 child, because that depicted mostly accurately the Charleston metro area's median family size, according to the census data. And then did another looked at the chain consumer price index and the regional South Atlantic consumer price index to attempt to estimate the future cost of living changes over the next few years. And then they use both the lowest and highest CPI data to estimate a living wage through 2024. And then also did the estimated cost of the general fund versus what we had talked about in our 3-year plan to $15 an hour. So this is what it came up as. So MIT for 1 adult 0 children is $16.43 or $17.57. UPI is 1863 and 1706. And then this consumer price index changes. You can see here. And then living wage adjusted by assumed CPI changes. This is what they've calculated out. So $17.33 to $19.13. That makes sense.
Thanks,
Does that make
Amy.
sense, Councilmember
Oh,
Gregory?
yes. Yes, I knew it was higher than $15 considerably. And I just wanted, when we talk about it, that we know what we're talking about.
Mhm.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you. Okay,
And so then this is the comparison from what we've currently calculated the cost to be to what Ryan had come up with. So over 3 years, the current proposal is 13.9 million. Minimum projected living wage would be $23.7 million hit to the general fund. And then if we did the maximum projected living wage, it would be a $31.3 million hit to the general fund over 3 years. Just so for some perspective. Good. And then Ryan had showed this in at the HR committee meeting, the last meeting, but Councilmember Weary and Councilmember Shade, you didn't get to see this, so we included it. They did a survey with the Municipal Association of South Carolina, just to kind of see kind of where we rank salary-wise with other cities in South Carolina. And if you look at this first right here, over here, oh, if I didn't change the slide, sorry about that. Fire department and police department are both at 83% of positions with salary in the top third, and non-sworn is at 23%. And then really, this is another good one to look at, the ranked average for us. The fire department ranked second, police department ranked first, and non-sworn ranked 9th. So that's that's 9 out of 10 responses, just so you know. And it was 12 responses for police and fire.
Amy, you lost me there on that very last thing. Repeat what you just said. What does this show me?
So ranked average out of all of the cities that responded, our fire department ranked second in salary, police department ranked first, and our non-sworn ranked 9th.
And that says out of 14 total, ranked average.
Mm-hmm.
And when you say first, you mean we're the highest?
paid.
Yeah.
is our cost of living the same?
That I don't know.
I
Can't
think that
imagine.
I would imagine it is, but I think that could be a relevant variable here.
I think we're a pretty high cost of living compared to some of those other places, but we can look at it.
Amy, along the lines of what Councilmember Gregory's asking, that would be an interesting comparison, how far a dollar in Charleston goes as opposed to how far a dollar goes in Savannah or Aiken.
Yeah, and I don't know in this survey if any of that is considered in it, but I will find out and we can get back to you. Okay.
Go ahead.
Councilmember Waring?
No, go ahead. If you had a question, I'll yield. Go ahead.
I would just want to make clear, when you say non-sworn, is that just within the non-sworn employees of the police and fire department, or is that all other city employees?
That's all city employees that are not sworn.
Thank you.
Yeah, that was exactly my question. I was going to that rank of 9th of non-sworn.
Well, because I think people forget, in police and fire, they have non-sworn employees that, so.
So when we compare our non-sworn to, I'm reading this right, North Charleston.
Mhm.
so they rank second in paying their non-sworn versus us ranking 9th.
That's what it says.
Yeah,
We need to do better.
I agree. Yes, sir. This is good information, man. Thank you for pulling this together.
well, like I said, Ryan and HR did all of this work. I cannot take credit for it at all.
Tell Ryan, I mean, this is great. You know, we all knew something it's kind of sliding, but this kind of allows you to target it where the problem is a lot better.
And so Councilmember Waring, you asked for employee turnover information.
Right.
So we have that. So the vacancy rate and turnover by department, they're based on the actual positions budgeted, but then also kind of look at what the HR system has as well. So it was a little hard for them with part-time positions, but for instance, if we budgeted 11.5 positions, they assumed 12 positions when they're doing this analysis. But when doing that, some departments that have a lot of part-time positions, it's kind of harder to estimate. So we think probably recreation's vacancy rate might be a little bit understated. So I just wanted to preface that when we go to show you the graph. And then right now, housing and community development is the only department that is fully staffed. And that's as of today. So this might be hard to see, but you can see the vacancy rates in all of the departments. And I'll send you these slides too, so it'll be easier for you. But so my department has a 10% vacancy rate, clerk of council's at 27%, executive is 18%, fire non-sworn is 46%, fire sworn is 3%, housing is at 0%, HR is at 6%, IT is at 18%, livability is at 19%, parks at 26%, planning 9%, police non-sworn is at 15%, police sworn is at 7%, public services at 28%, recreation 13%. And like I said, we think because they have so many part-time employees that might be understated a little. Stormwater is at 41%, TNT 36%. So overall, city sworn is only at 5%, city non-sworn is at 22%, and combined sworn non-sworn is 15%.
Amy, I doubt if we have the data, but do we have a comparison, to those same other cities? You showed the comparison on salaries. Do they provide data on their vacancy or turnover?
I don't think so, Mayor. I think we have to ask them.
No, we asked that question.
Mm-hmm.
So then average staffing level, sworn
Amy, go back to
hiring.
that. Amy,
Sure.
go back to that one.
Yep.
Councilman Waring, look at the public service column that you and I were talking about this morning.
That's right. I saw public, stormwater, public towers, and then fire non-sworn, 46%.
And then the yellow line here is the year-to-date turnover rates for each.
Look at HR.
I know, they've had a hard time this year.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just want to mention briefly that I'm pretty concerned about stormwater being the second highest department vacancy rate wise. I just think in a city like ours, with some of the challenges we have, we've got to figure out a path forward on that.
Hey, Councilmember Pell, I think you got to combine that with the public service as well. When you look at those two numbers combined.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more. I mean, that's very fundamental stuff that our constituents rely on daily.
Yeah, they go hand in glove.
The next graph I'll show you is about our average staffing levels. So sworn hiring has generally improved since 2008. So they're hiring more staff than they're losing. Non-sworn hiring has decreased steadily with a fairly major decrease in 2021. So we're losing staff faster than we can hire them. And a little perspective on that is average non-sworn staff has dropped 2% while we've been adding positions. So while our budgeted non-sworn positions have increased by 13% because we're adding more staff every year, probably except for the last couple of years. the staffing has dropped by 2%. So we're adding positions in the budget, but we're losing them faster than we can fill them.
Amy,
Yes.
yeah, can we tell, based upon salary level, where most of the vacancies are?
Yes, I have a slide on that coming up. So this is just a graph of the average staffing levels. This up here is non-sworn, this is sworn. So okay, can I move on? So staffing levels, the current non-sworn staffing is at the April 2014 level, down from our staff high in August of 2018. And over that time period, we've added an additional 127 employees to the budget. But through year end, we're projecting to be down an additional 100 employees since June of 2020.
How are we making our goals?
Everybody's working really hard.
Unbelievably so.
Yeah.
What's the
And I'm
total?
sure, you know, there's some things that we aren't getting done too, Councilmember Gregory, but you know, for the most
I
part,
understand.
we're working hard.
That's unbelievable.
Amy, go back to that other slide one more time.
Which one? This one?
No. Go
This
forward. No, go forward.
Oh, forward. I'm sorry. This
Stop.
one?
No, go
Okay.
right there. So through year end, we're projected to be down an additional 100 employees since June of 2020. What is our total workforce?
It's usually 1,700. I go back here. So budgeted. I don't know that we have the budgeted. I don't have that. I'll get it. The 2 slides forward has it. Okay, hold on. Oh, Brian. So is it? I don't have, Brian, somebody told me to move forward and now I can't find it. I'm sorry. Well, I'll get it for you.
Okay, that's fine.
Let me go back. 2 slides forward. Anyway, so you can see that's where we had our 2019 pay plan adjustment, which, you know, helped us for a little bit. And then we've steadily declined since then.
Amy,
Mhm.
I guess for the last decade, I mean, I guess this is human resources, but the city's had between 17 and less than 1,800 employees, basically for a decade, servicing a population that increased from, I don't know, 120 to 150,000 people.
Mhm.
We've gotten more efficient.
I'm telling you, it's just,
We've had,
Hey, Amy,
Yes.
do you have a figure when we have 100 vacancies? What is that worth in terms of dollars?
Well, it depends on pay grade. We'd have to analyze, you know, which positions we think they are to get you a good number.
Okay, thank you.
So staffing levels versus budget levels, which you talked about. Right now, non-sworn staffing is at 78% of the budgeted positions and has been steadily declining for the past year. And sworn staffing is at 94% of budgeted positions.
Hey, Amy, with all, and you may get to it next. When we have these staffing levels that are pretty low, how does that compare to overtime in terms of increases or decreases? Probably increases substantially.
It does. You know, so this year we cut overtime significantly. So people have been flexing time a lot in order to not go over budget in their overtime costs.
It's a good strategy. Okay.
So this is what the staffing levels look like versus budgeted. The yellow line is budgeted, non-sworn. The gray line here is budgeted sworn, and then actual sworn position. So you see the difference here versus the difference here is pretty big. So turnover by grade, I think Councilmember Waring is one of the things you really wanted to see. So we've found that our highest turnover has been in our second lowest pay grade, which is pay grade 7. And examples of positions in that grade are recreation specialists, parking enforcement officers, and traffic control technicians. And then the second highest turnover has been in our highest pay grade, which is just below our unclassified pay grade, which is mostly department heads. And examples of those positions are the chief building official, the city architect, and a lot of our deputy department heads.
Thank you.
And so this is what it looks like. So you can see this is grade 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, which for some reason 14 and 16 are pretty low. This is 15, 17, and then that's 18. And then this is our unclassified.
So it's pretty evenly distributed, really.
We just found it interesting that it's the second lowest and really the second highest pay grades.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
But the most concerning one, I think, is the second lowest.
Mm-hmm.
They seem to be
grade
the
7.
hardest,
Agree.
Yeah.
they seem to be the hardest positions to fill. I wonder how this correlates to the existing vacancies, so to speak, the unfilled positions.
I mean, Mayor, or even the minimum wage.
Well, those would be your ones on the left-hand side.
Correct.
So they're, like I said, they're pretty even except for that second one across the board. But anyway, there are probably a lot more positions that are not filled down there than there are on the right-hand side of the graph, but that's just my guess.
So total turnover through September of each year. By August of this year, we had seen as much turnover as we did in 2014, 15, 16, and 2020. Non-sworn turnover is at its highest level that we've seen, and sworn turnover is reaching its lowest level, which is mostly driven by fire, but police is dropping to its third lowest rate right now as well. And so this
Amy,
is-
your top bullet, when you say the string of years, you don't mean cumulative, you mean each of those years was also a big turnover.
Right. So here's the graph, Councilmember Jackson, so you can see. The yellow is city non-sworn, green is all of the city. Obviously, we use red and blue all the time for fire and police, and then the gray is city sworn. Good. And then there's this graph here for, total turnover projected through year end. We're expecting or projecting for non-sworn will be at 24%.
All right.
That's more questions than answers. When you look at that. I think you did a good job of pinpointing for us, Amy, the two categories that, and maybe that's what our starting point is.
So Any other questions on that? I went through this way faster than I thought I would.
Because you're efficient.
I try to be anyway. So what's next? We'll meet next meeting, which is on October 20th. We'll go over our enterprise fund, the departments I mentioned earlier, stormwater and lease purchase. And just let me know if you have any questions. I will send you the slides and any other information you need.
Let me ask this, Amy. This was great. Thank you so much. In between, I guess, our next meeting, obviously we have a revenue problem. We don't have I don't really think we got an expense problem, Mr. Mayor and Councilman. We got a revenue problem because of our austerity over a number of years. Obviously, the pandemic coming in there like a tsunami, but
Come back again, council member. I can't hear you well.
I said we really have a revenue problem. We really don't have an expense problem. I mean, what we're being asked of us certainly isn't unreasonable. We hadn't had a glut of employees, for the last decade. And of course, nobody planned for a pandemic. But if you were going to ask, if we were going to brainstorm, and I'm not asking for an idea now, but Amy and everybody else, if we were going to brainstorm how we can increase revenue, obviously taxes is one, to be able to, frankly, pay out people and be able to fill some of these positions so public services, the various departments can be delivered at a higher level than we're doing now. I mean, what would that brainstorming include? I just don't think that's a bad answer to that. So I would hope maybe at our next meeting we can have, you've pointed out great, the expenses and the needs. I know you'll be coming with more, but at the end of the day, how do we pay for it? So.
Councilmember Jackson.
Thanks. Thank you, Councilmember Waring. I would say that in addition to the two problem areas or the revenue that you're talking about, we have an operational functional problem or condition. I mean, I don't know how, frankly, managers come to work every day knowing the work that there is to be done with the staffing and the resources that through no fault of their own have seen attrition or, the competitive turnover, especially in the areas of the public services and the stormwater, because we're competing with the private sector for those jobs. And, I don't know, have we started asking the departments to, come together and think about how they can be streamlining their operations or really giving us a whole new paradigm of how services could potentially be delivered to our citizens? Because even if we had all the money in the world, if we don't have the staff to take the jobs, we're not doing we're not doing our citizens the services set of responsibilities that we've signed on for. So I don't know. I feel a little grim right now, but I do think that it's something we need to be looking at.
Councilmember Gregory.
Yeah, Mayor. A couple of things, and I think we do have to try to determine how we can increase revenue. And one of the areas we may want to look at is our economic development arm and attracting more industry to our city. While I do know that we have an economic development function, I think that perhaps in some way trying to formalize that in some way, like when you were there, Mayor, might give us the kind of increases that Councilman Waring is alluding to. Just for discussion purposes, but I do think that we have to make a determination of how we're going to increase revenue.
Right. Well, one of the bright spots Amy pointed out was how much higher our business license revenue was this year than we even expected. So I'll be honest with you, I think business activity has been surprising post-pandemic, and we're not even past it all the way yet. And I think that will continue. You know, we should probably save this overall discussion for another day. I mean, we don't think about chasing smokestacks like we used to, you know, in the old days. And in this city, we don't have the real estate to put up, you know, a big manufacturing plant or, you know, the heavy industrial zoning, that kind of thing. So our growth has been in more digital corridor style companies and you know, sole practitioners moving here who are taking out a business license and that kind of thing. And the numbers show that activity has actually been pretty good. So, but there are a lot of nuances to that discussion, which I welcome to have with y'all at some point. I would like to make the observation that, and I don't want to discount our turnover with non-sworn positions at all. It's a very serious matter. But I would bet that if you look at other businesses over the last year, particularly with the effects of the pandemic, that there's been a lot of turnover and people changing positions, careers. I mean, you saw the whole hospitality industry here almost wiped out with 40,000 people moving from one job to another or moving to unemployed. So they're just naturally in COVID environment has been a lot of turnover, and I'm not discounting the fact that that we need to pay our non-sworn employees more money. That's just flat, simple statement. We need to follow through somehow on what we've been talking about now for months in terms of adjustment, cost of living increase for all employees, but particularly at this point, our non-sworn positions. So we got to figure that out. And whether that means we go back and have the discussion one more time about the local option sales tax or, you know, millage rates or other fees that we can add. I presume Amy is taking into account the new traffic and public right-of-way fees that we recently put in place. But anyway, all of the above. Councilmember Shade.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I just want to build on what Councilmember Waring and Councilmember Gregory are talking about, because I think this is a critical discussion we need to be having. And I hear your points as well, Mayor. I think that you hit it on some wonderful points too. But this is maybe getting a little bit far afield of what we're addressing right now. But I think there's a little bit bigger issue here that we're dealing with. It's becoming increasingly more expensive to live in the city of Charleston. I mean, I've seen it from firsthand with young people who want to move here, who want to live here, and want to take advantage of the things that the city offers. It is expensive to live in the city of Charleston. Attainable housing across the board is just becoming much more difficult. And when you start trying to lure other types of business into the community, I think people look at, if I'm going to establish an industry or relocate an industry here, or if I want to be a startup and do that, they're going to look at variables associated with that. If they're going to land someplace within the jurisdictional boundaries of the city of Charleston, they want to look at what is it going to cost me to do business in the city of Charleston. It's not just the business license part of it. It's everything is as simple as transportation, parking, property taxes, rent, leases, going to get a sandwich down at a local deli or something like that. But this sort of a more broad-based kind of spectral question, I think that we're not, and this may not be part of what our jurisdiction is as far as this ad hoc budget committee is concerned, but it's certainly worth a discussion as to figuring out what else can we bring into the city of Charleston, industry-wise, business-wise, that Councilwoman Waring and Gregory are talking about, and how do we do that? And how do we bring those incentives down here? Because what that's going to entail, if we are able to do that, is not just the revenue that is generated with that business being in here. It also is going to have a positive impact on folks moving back into the community as well, and spending their dollars here as well. So I know I'm going a little bit far off field on our discussion, but I think that they are hitting on a very valid point that we need to be talking about. And finally, on the other subject about this high number of vacancies that we're having in those two particular categories, I think that maybe something very simple would be in order, which is just doing a survey with our department heads and asking them. And that's the conversation Councilmember Waring and I had this morning, exactly about that point, as to getting down to that level with those employees and asking them and talking to them, the ones who are staying and the ones who have left, and having a conversation and finding out what is it that we're doing that is motivating them to lose those folks. In a very simple process of doing that, there's just nothing scientific, nothing fancy. It's just having a conversation and saying, are you thinking about leaving? And so why are you thinking about leaving? And you can hit those two categories as a starting point to find out and what we need to do to address it. That is just, I mean, we're at critical mass with our staffing, I think. Some of it may be we can do better with less because we need to be more efficient. We're more modernized. We're using different kind of technology. But on the flip side of that, there may be another equation that we're not addressing with that. Anyhow, those are my random thoughts, and I just think this is all worthy of further discussions regarding how we're heading with this. Thanks.
Hey, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor.
I saw Councilmember Waring and Amy, and then.
I'm gonna yield to Amy first. Go ahead. Yield to Amy.
Member Shea, just to let you know, in one of the HR committee meetings that we had, HR did present some information on exit interviews and why people were leaving. I can get that to you. I'll get it to all of you so you can see that.
And council member, I talk with our department heads really on a very regular basis. And as we last 6 months have talked about this position and that position and losing this person and that person, most times it's because of the salary level, most times. That's my recollection. Councilmember Waring, then Gregory.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. One of the things that, again, we just topics for different discussion. I actually think we need to look at impact fees. We really don't have impact fee on certain development. Now, obviously, we don't want to do with our neighbor Mount Pleasant, some of their impact fees. I'm getting a feedback. Some people mute.
I hate to say it, that's Councilmember Gregory, if you would
Right.
mute until I call on you next.
Okay, good, thank you. But some other towns, they have impact fees to discourage growth. We don't need to do that, but right now we're at zero when it comes to impact fees on a lot of things. I mean, and I think if we had impact fees on new construction, and we need to study it now, we don't need to run people away. But I know there's a sweet spot between maybe where Mount Pleasant is and our zero right now where we are. So there are a number of things out there that I think we can, there's no panacea with one solution, but maybe we put a couple of them together and we end up with, some additional revenue streams that could endure. But anyway, just wanted to throw that out.
Thank you. Councilmember Gregory.
Yeah, and you just reminded me, Councilman Waring, because that goes back to something that Councilman Appel has been talking to us about since he's been on council, and that is changing our zoning laws. Because our zoning laws, I think, can in some way assist us in increasing revenue. But the other thing is on efficiency, and Mayor, correct me if I'm wrong, I thought that that's what Novak was doing for us. in terms of doing a study of all of our departments and then to make recommendations to be more efficient. And I know in some ways they have done that. I don't know whether or not that has been complete, but I think that if it was, it would answer some of the questions that we're having now based upon data.
Right. They have been doing that over the last couple of years, and I wouldn't say they've done all departments, but we went to the logical places and have had some good results, and that's part of the reason why we're able to handle 25,000 more citizens with less employees, to be honest with you. But
I mean, but that also begs
we're
the
a pretty
question.
lean machine. We're pretty lean.
I guess, but that also begs the question, Mayor, as to whether or not you even need those employees.
Right, but you reach some point where either you got to do it yourself or contract it out. I mean, look at picking up trash. I mean, we do what, a third of the city with outsourced contractors, and you got to either pay them or pay our own people at some point. And if it's a job that needs to be done by our city government. Councilmember Appel.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And to Councilman Waring's point, impact fees are something that I'm very familiar with. First couple of years out of law school, I worked with a firm that helped set up impact fee programs around the country. And in my current firm, I've litigated against probably 75% or more of the impact fee programs in the state. And I can tell you, it didn't work in Berkeley County. It didn't work in Dorchester County. We're fighting Beaufort County right now over impact fees. Impact fees for smaller scale infrastructure, police, fire, parks, things of that nature, those can work pretty effectively. And I believe the city has that already. But when cities start getting into transportation fees, school impact fees, things of that nature, it really becomes difficult. And what it does is it ends up exacerbating housing affordability problems, because the developers, they just pass this fee on to the consumer. And on the commercial side, the fees just get so enormous. It's just unbelievable. I mean, in the Berkeley County impact fee case that we litigated about 5 years ago, a Walmart was built out in Berkeley County. They paid a $500,000 impact fee. And Chick-fil-A's were paying $80,000 impact fees. And what it ended up happening was commercial development just, steered clear out of Berkeley County for the most part. That's why when you drive up around Cane Bay and some of these sprawling oceans of residential development, you don't see gas stations, you don't see fast food restaurants, you don't see shopping centers. It's because the impact fees really created a disincentive for commercial development, which, by the way, is, of course, as we all know, the best bang for the buck when it comes to property tax at that 6% rate. But it's a good thought. And I mean, impact fees are one of the few programs and mechanisms municipalities have beyond, millage and business license revenue, which is of course, our top two revenue sources. Unfortunately, I think, not to be pessimistic here, but what I think our struggles and challenges are revealing is that just South Carolina right now, the operating system that runs and governs the relationship between the state, the county, local governments from a fiscal standpoint is set up for the, a generous assessment would be the 20th century, but a more realistic, it might be the 19th century, frankly, in a lot of ways. And it's just not set up for urban growing cities. It's just not, I mean, the amount of wealth that's generated here in the city of Charleston, by the time the feds, the state, and the county get their cut, we're left with these little peanuts. And then we don't even have the mechanisms to put a 0.5 cent sales tax on something. I mean, Charleston County can do a 0.5 cent sales tax and raise up, hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars. And they can do it like this. Where's all that money coming from? It's coming from us. right? And maybe Mount Pleasant and North Charleston to a lesser extent. So, I mean, these are real problems that really strike to the core of how we're set up here as a state. And it's unfortunate. And, you know, I think that it leaves us in a very difficult position, because I think what we're going to be facing here over the next couple of months, not to try to get too far ahead of this, is, I mean, we're going to really be having to stare down a millage increase here right after we, you know, approved one, then pulled one back. And I'm not disputing that. I think we did the right thing on that. But, you know, there's going to be some hard conversations coming up, I think. And it's just unfortunate, because there's only so many buttons and levers we have to push. But this is the stuff that concerns me, what we're talking about right now. I mean, you know, stormwater department, 40% vacancy, you know, that's a problem. We got to find a way to get there. And I'm in it with it all. Let's find a way forward. But you know, unfortunately, you know, we've got to find a way over time. And I know nothing happens fast in this state. We got to find a way to give municipalities some more autonomy and some more control over their resources. I mean, as Councilman Shea talks about, I mean, the fact that, you know, the DOT, I mean, you know, we try to do little enhancements here and there, and we're on the hook for it. Meanwhile, they're taking all of our money and not giving us any of the money back. I mean, it's just no way to run a state, and it's unfortunate. And the proof is in the pudding. I mean, you look at our roads compared to, I just got back from Virginia this past weekend. Unbelievable roads, unbelievable infrastructure. You know, Georgia, Athens, when you talk about bike lanes, you talk about paved roads. I mean, it's night and day. It's night and day. And South Carolina is just so far behind, and it's sad. But we got to find a way forward. Sorry for the ramble, but these are some of the issues. But we got to be careful with impact fees for sure. Thanks.
Yeah, Councilman Ware may accuse
I
you
totally
of
agree.
pontificating.
We're all allowed an occasional ramble.
I don't think we're going to solve anything here today, Mayor, but I do think that we should be very cognizant of the, you know, systemic challenge questions that we're asking ourselves, because we can't go into a budget where it's just about the numbers. We've got to, you know, really drill down and do some hard thinking about the overall system that creates our revenue, spends our money, and serves our employees and as they serve our citizens. So
It seems like we do this every year. And Amy,
Well-
we haven't even, what was the total of departmental requests that you don't even have in there?
It was $22 million.
22 million.
That's 22 million that are all good things that we want to do, you know, right? I mean,
Right.
they didn't
Yeah.
rise to the top because some department head just had a whim. I mean, there's some real needs out there in that $22 million
Exactly.
that we would like to see happen. Councilmember Shade? You're on mute.
I said, no, I'm just stretching and tired of sitting down.
Councilmember
Good.
Yeah, I certainly appreciate Councilman Appel, and I kind of hedge if you remember I made mention we don't want to do like Mount Pleasant, but I don't know if you see some, and that's not for today, but in your career, if you see other states that's doing something that, or other municipalities in other states, I should say, that we can't do here. And maybe it's a longer haul, but then maybe we try to introduce something and get some changes at the General Assembly level, so we can have some sort of municipal stream of revenue, let's put it like this, beyond millage increase. But I like the brainstorm. I do, and I know this meeting will come to an end, and I will hope maybe some other process where we could just brainstorm on revenue, and almost a charrette on the revenue side, so to speak.
I have a good spot. We could meet at
I
Turbo
know.
Town.
Listen, I was about to mention that, by the way. I've already been there. I was about to mention, you know, we can continue this at a place, nice outdoor, it's cool outside, milkshakes, ice cream cones, and we can keep brainstorming right West Ashley right now on this subject after this meeting's over. So You don't have to twist my arm to go in, I'll tell you that.
Well, Councilmember Appel, just to follow on that one issue of the impact fees, my understanding is that since the time that Mount Pleasant put theirs in place, that state law changed to make it harder for municipalities to put these fees into place effectively. Is that your understanding, or do you have any history of that, knowledge of that?
Yeah, so in 2000, the General Assembly passed the South Carolina Development Impact Fee Enabling Act, which set a statutory framework and set of parameters for how local governments are supposed to enact these fees, a bunch of procedural and substantive requirements. Prior to that, there were a handful of municipalities in the state that imposed impact fees out of the pure police powers theory, and Mount Pleasant was one of them. And the legislation in 2000 recognized and essentially grandfathered in the local governments that had adopted the fees prior to that point. But at each step where local governments have amended their fees, my understanding is that they've had to come into compliance with the modern rules. And I can tell you, to Councilman Waring's point, I mean, Mount Pleasant has some of the most expensive impact fees, not just in South Carolina, but certainly in the Southeast, maybe the entire East Coast. And I hope nobody from Mount Pleasant's listening in on this right now, but they are using that as a growth control mechanism, which is an improper purpose for impact fees. Impact fees are supposed to be very carefully calibrated to the proportionate demand of the development or the payor relative to what they're receiving in return. There's supposed to be a tight nexus there. And I can tell you, they've got their hand on the dial and they're just cranking it because they don't want to see more growth. They don't want to see more development. Guys, they have a apartment moratorium that they've renewed multiple times, and they've got a building permit allocation system. I mean, it is so impossible to do development, both residential and commercial in Mount Pleasant. It's unreal. And listen, we got financial challenges we're talking about today. They got major challenges on the horizon over there. They got their own set of problems. But Mayor, going back to your question, it's not that difficult to get these things adopted. I mean, the state law essentially requires these engineering reports to be prepared that essentially do these calculations to support the fees. But it's not that arduous to do it. In the Councilman Waring's point, I mean, if you go into this with a very carefully, there could be some ways that this could help us, but the potential to really chill development, exacerbate affordable housing problems, drive development to other neighboring jurisdictions without the fees. These are real challenges with impact fees, but we'll see.
Yeah, I agree. I think that we're better off doing our zoning and incentivizing development where we want it. That should be the bright line that we paint for ourselves, that we know that there's pent up demand for the kind of housing that we need for the economy here. And I'm going to be on record. We need to support the budget for doing the zoning in the coming 2 years that our director has mapped out for us. And we need to start with the incentives, because that will create, a new density that will be appropriately located and the right mix for where people want to live and work in Charleston.
I think that item would be on the $22 million list, right, Amy? The request to do the zoning.
Is there one? I think they want $1 million for that, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So Amy, could you send us all kind of the recap of that $22 million list?
Yes, I sent the list last night, Mayor, the whole master list. But if there's something else that you need, just let me know.
Okay, I hadn't
Yeah,
seen
you
it.
can see it. It says 22 million right at the bottom.
Right.
Okay.
Below T&T.
Gotcha.
It's there.
You need a magnifying glass if you're going to print it out. But
You really, really do.
I got that at 10:19 last night and I haven't opened it yet. Gotcha. All right. Well, this has certainly been an exciting conversation. Any other, Councilmember Appel?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I'll be brief on this, and I'm going to try and give a little bit of credit back to our legislature here. I was a little rough a few minutes ago, but there is this other area under South Carolina law that does provide local governments with the potential for some creativity and flexibility in the area of finance and revenue generation. And those are few and far between in our state, as we've talked about, but it's the user fee statutes. And we've recently done this with some of the traffic and transportation permitting fees and things of that nature.
Right.
There's definitely some pitfalls. Greenville County got slammed by the Supreme Court for their road maintenance fee. It was acting like a tax. They were calling it a fee. But we can design fee programs as long as the payor is receiving a benefit unique to themselves in exchange for the monies they're paying, right? And we calibrate it correctly. There could be some opportunities for us to get into some pretty creative revenue generating concepts, especially if developers have options. And I've got this idea, we can talk about it later, but I don't think we got time today, of sort of like global entry, like in the airport, for various city processes where you can pay some extra money to expedite certain types of reviews and permitting and things of that nature. And I'm telling you, there's developers in this community that'll pay $500,000, right, to expedite a project 6 months, maybe millions in certain situations. And it's not the city like taking this money as like some sort of like largesse or some sort of like a bounty or something. It's that money gets pumped into the departments that are facilitating and reviewing the projects, and it all kind of cycles through. They get a unique service, we get money in return that we could substantiate. I think that's an area worth exploring, because I do think we don't have Boeing and we don't have Mercedes and things like that coming, but we got well-heeled developers coming from all over the country on hotel projects, mixed use projects, things of that nature, especially downtown. And they would pay to get their project online quicker, reduce their carrying costs, things of that nature. And we can fuel that through these departments, potentially, whether it be stormwater, whether it be our planning and zoning department, things of that nature. So I wanted to leave on a somewhat optimistic note.
And to service the user fees like that, Councilmember Appel, that's where we would, really be changing the way that we provide services, doing our efficiencies, getting into the systems. Hiring the right staff to make those user fees valuable to our customers. So it's an equation on both sides of the ledger, and we'd have to be serious about both of them because you can't promise what you can't deliver. So yeah, but I think that's very enterprising, very innovative, to coin a phrase these days.
And some of them are the things that we're doing already, like the T&T fees we did for the public right of way. Amy, how much did you estimate in revenue for that for next year? Anything?
We did, but I can't remember the exact number, Mayor.
Yeah. So in another example, council members, that Tracy McKee and IT are looking at is to have a little charge for technology, a technology fee for all the different aspects of our business where we're using IT services, be it submittal of documents by through the IT system. And, even if it's a minimal percent charge over a year's time with all our business, it could be a couple of $1 million and things like that. We're coming forward. We've already discussed at T&T or Public Works, maybe it was Public Service, of having some add-on charges for trash and garbage pickup. Right now, if you got 2 cans, there's no extra charge. We just pick them both up, you know, or if you put more out than you're allowed, we just pick it up anyway. You know, so I mean, I hate to say it, but we really continue, we're in the process, but takes time to get these fees fairly figured out and put in place. But we continue to look at any opportunities like that are appropriate that we should be charging folks for.
We've contributed to our citizens' entitlement. We've enabled. So when you talk to any area that is as spread out as ours and provides the variety of services that we do, people pay. They get their basics, but anything beyond that, they pay. And it's like Councilmember Appel said, on the development side, for good service, you're willing to have a little fee when you need it, when you have to use it.
Yeah.
I will just say though, that we can't make money on it. So when we do the calculations, we have to make sure that we have, it's only basically covering the cost. So it's not like somebody's going to be able to pay $500,000 and, you know, because that probably wouldn't be, our fee's going to be that high is what I'm saying. It will help, but it's not probably going to be a huge windfall for us either.
Gotcha. Yeah, you get back to the state legislature, they got chains on us here and there, right, council member? Appel.
Amy is absolutely right. I mean, the fees cannot be, you can't extort people through user fees in South Carolina. But it all comes down to the financial modeling and analysis of what people are paying and what they're receiving in return. And if we talk about this, I'm calling it the global entry program, and we need 25 more staff people in our stormwater review process and our zoning department, and we add up all those salaries, we add up all that stuff, and you can model this. I mean, this is how, going back to the impact fees, Mount Pleasant justifies unbelievably expensive impact fees. They have a report prepared by engineers and economists that crunch all this stuff and make this stuff happen. Now, City of Charleston has been incredibly conservative and incredibly fair to our detriment over the years in the way we've crunched these numbers and applied these things. Like, so for example, with the TNT stuff, I mean, I think, those fees were set pretty conservatively. And I'm not suggesting any kind of like windfall or anything like that, but it costs a lot of money to run a city, and it costs a lot of money to run a city at the level of efficiency that we're proposing here in this program. And I was just throwing $500,000 out as just a random number, but I think once all of this is analyzed and crunched, I think we could support some pretty healthy fees to help, again, roll back into these departments that are providing service. And that's the hallmark of a user fee in South Carolina, is you have to be receiving a discrete, individualized service in return for the fee. That's what differentiates it from a tax, where people pay their taxes. We can use it for, our health plans. We can use it for a park. We could use it for the low battery. We could use it for whatever. Fees, there has to be that tight connection between what you're paying and what you're getting. And if the service costs a lot to provide, we could substantiate and justify a pretty significant fee under those circumstances. But it would need to be modeled and studied, and we need to have our ducks in a row to make it happen. But especially if we can create a scenario where it's like an option, kind of like our MUWH program. In other words, where people are not forced into that. It's something you can elect. You're more than happy to go in the TSA line with everybody else. They're not going to, it's going to be very, very low fee. But if you want that black tie service, you're going to have to pay for it. And that money then gets rolled back into our various departments. I just think it's something worth exploring, and, especially given the challenges we're facing. I mean, I think that these kind of things are going to be more important than ever, or we got to do some major work at the state level.
Yep.
Thank y'all.
That's all.
Mayor, I apologize. I have to leave the meeting. So thank you so much for a great couple of hours.
Great. Councilmember Waring.
Yeah, just to follow up on Councilmember Ross, Appellants now. For example, the mayor talked about they're looking at technology fees. And I guess we did the calculation, including our people. From time to time, we have to upgrade our software. And then that falls on the taxpayers as opposed to the user. And I'm wondering, obviously, if we put that upgrade, right now, Wes is asking for upgrades, so to speak. We had a way to include that into the fee along with our people. At least we get closer to break even. I think what you're talking about is just great, man. So obviously we need another round of this and can't do it all in one day, but I appreciate very much this brainstorming. And when you think about development, Mr. Man, you look at the State Ports Authority property, you look at Laurel Island that's coming. I mean, if we keep our same structure in place, we'll have more to service. Yeah, we'll get some more on property taxes, but there's a big time lag there.
Yep, that's right. Absolutely. All right. Well, this has been an excellent brainstorming session and good information. Amy, thanks for your usual terrific job of pulling the numbers together. And Councilmember Waring, I picked up on your optimism earlier in the meeting when you said, what'd you say? Well, it sure is a lot better than last year.
Yeah, it is.
We have a challenge, but I think just 12 months ago, it was worse. So
that was a heck of orientation last year, I tell you.
let's try to stay optimistic as we work our way through this. All right. Thank you, everybody. Appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you,
Take care,
staff.
man.